If you think there's still a gender gap in Canada, you would be right. And it might not just be the glass ceiling that's holding back women in the workplace. There's a new study that shows Canada has a lot to do to bridge that gender gap. According to the World Economic Forum, this country ranks 16th when it comes to female economic opportunity, education, health, and political empowerment. We were in the same spot last year. We were 16 last year as well. Now, when it comes to wage equality for women, Canada is 50th, behind the likes of the US and Uganda and Ukraine. And here's another eye-popping figure. At the current rate, the study suggests full gender equality worldwide is still 200 plus years away. But what seems to be some good news for Canada in this report is that we have the world's 5th largest AI workforce. That's artificial intelligence. We've got Arthi Pohl working on that part of the story. In this AI realm, Arthi, how does Canada compare?
Well, Canada is doing remarkably well in the sense that it is within the top 5, especially when you look at those other numbers that you were speaking about with the gender gap. So Canada is doing well in the sense that it does have a larger workforce, and those numbers were compiled actually by LinkedIn for the World Economic Forum report. But in terms of where they're ranking, let's quickly take a look at that list. The United States is first, India, Germany, Switzerland, then Canada. And in fact, an interesting point here, which is something positive as well, is that compared to those other 4 countries that are above Canada in that ranking, there are more females in the AI workforce in Canada than those other 4 countries. And so that is, of course, an important point to make there. Now, one of the reasons why it's being highlighted that it's important to make sure that there is a diverse workforce when it comes to this, not just with more women, but also with different ethnic backgrounds too, is because there are limitations that can be put in place when there are not that sort of diverse workforce. So let's quickly take a look at what some of those challenges are. For example, there would be the risk of maintaining existing biases if you don't have a wide variety of staff making up that workforce to put the input in with these different technologies and developments. Also, it can prevent from identifying glitches in technology. We've been talking about one example that's been highlighted where there was a facial recognition technology that was designed and could not actually recognize darker skin tones. And that was something that if you don't have someone testing it out from a diverse background, you might not see. Also, there can be limitations on innovation and inclusive capacity when you don't have everyone putting their own input into this from different backgrounds, socioeconomic, gender, and different ethnic backgrounds as well, so that you've got that wide variety of input when it comes to progression. Also, one more interesting thing to note here when it comes to women and technology is actually automation seems to be having a negative impact on women. For example, roles when it comes to self-checkout, let's say, these are sometimes roles that women may have more of that in the workforce, and they're losing their jobs because of automation. And this is one example of that, and there's not as many women entering that growth sector. Suhana.
Arthi, any reaction to this gap? Any also solution-based thinking? How might we close this gap?
Well, it's interesting because, yes, of course, there are reactions to this in the sense that there's a lot of push coming from experts to make sure that there's more enrollment and recruitment of people, of women, into these particular industries. But there was also a point that was made suggesting that, you know, there are high female executives when it comes to these sorts of sectors and industries within Canada itself. For example, when it comes to Facebook, Uber self-driving vehicles, and also within Google, there are some women within Canada, Montreal, Toronto, that are at the senior level within this. So there are women who you can look up to, but we need to just put an additional push to women to encourage them to go into these sorts of sectors where we're not seeing them, Suhana.
Thanks for that, Arthi.
You're welcome.
So how do we attract more women, more girls to AI? How do we help them thrive in what is still, right now, a male-dominated industry? My next guest has a few ideas. Jody Wallace is the Managing Director for Artificial Intelligence in Canada at Accenture. That's a consulting firm that focuses a lot on technology. She also co-hosts a podcast called The AI Effect. And our Chase team has brought Jody right here to studio. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So the WEF, points out a problem let's try to solve it, because that's what women do, right?
Right.
We're fixers. So, Jody, between the two of us, in the 5 minutes we have for this interview, let's fix it.
Sounds good.
What should we do?
Well, I think Arthi made some great points there. If we're graduating 20% of an engineering class that's female, it's really hard to get from that to 50% of the workforce. If we're graduating less than 20% of the math classes that are women, we aren't going to get to parity. So we have to fix the issue in universities by going back into high schools and looking at how we attract more women to study these fields.
And maybe even before that, because by the time you hit grade 10, if you've chosen certain courses, you're on a path.
You got it. And if you, yes, particularly if you've opted out of the things that are prerequisites for certain university programs, you're on a path. So we have to look at that, and we have to do a better job of figuring out how to engage girls. I think we've done a lot with coding, which is excellent, but I don't think coding is enough. And as a matter of fact, if you look at a lot of the technology jobs in the workforce today, they're not all coding jobs. Technology doesn't necessarily equate to coding.
And yet parents who are my age seem to think, oh, that is the key.
Right.
Coding is the magic word, and that's what they look for when they see those schools that offer after-school programs, right?
And I'm not saying coding is not important. It's very important. It's a great skill. They've shown studies that coding is sometimes associated in young kids with video gaming. And so if a kid is not interested in video gaming, there's a very low likelihood she will be interested in coding. So we have to look beyond coding and say, what else can we do with our younger children leading up to grade 8? Things like robotics could be very attractive. Things like just general statistical problem solving. There are a lot of fun games that you can play around that, or fun for me anyways. So I think we have to look at that. I think we're in an interesting place, though, when you look at the current workforce. So we can't, right now, we can focus on the future of education, but we can't undo the fact that we've been graduating very low numbers of women in technology fields. So what do we do in the workforce? The good news is AI in the workforce, so AI has been around for a long time, 50, 60, 70 years, but it's been primarily the domain of academic researchers. Now it's come to the mainstream. It's in the workforce, it's in industry. It's not just in technology companies.
Movies are being made about it.
You got it. So what can we do there? The good news is nobody's been doing AI in the workforce. It's not like men have been doing it for a long time in the workplace and women haven't. Nobody's been doing it in sort of mainstream
because it hasn't existed
Canada
for that long.
Exactly.
So then how do we make that catch-up rate even faster?
And I think that's the trick. So you referred earlier about LinkedIn having done some of the statistical analysis for the World Economic Forum. One of the things that they've noted is women and men have been building AI skills at the same rate over the last 4 years. So that's not enough because we started too low, but I think we have an opportunity to say, let's pull women along. Let's encourage women to study this new field. Let's encourage women who are already in the workforce to look at this as a great opportunity for future growth.
What about for the women who are already in AI? And, you know, I mean, numbers of them there. Few getting top jobs, though. If this sector has only been around for a certain amount of time, you would think the promotion rate would be equal.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing some great successes. And Arthi mentioned, for example, Joelle Pineau, who runs Facebook's AI Research Center in Montreal. You know, that's a very senior woman in AI and participating in sort of the economic component of AI, not just the research component. So we do see some of them. I mean, the problem is it's a small total workforce. The numbers are still small. It's small everywhere. It's nice to see that we have the 5th highest concentration, but still the total numbers are fairly small. The point that I think is really important is we can look at systemic programs and we can talk about the economics, but we need a ground game. We need people to individually identify and pull women along and give them the opportunities to learn, to reskill, to participate.
More than just mentoring. I think of mentoring as such a soft, you know, kind of thing that women do for each other. Well, I'll mentor you, but really, we need something more concrete than that, right?
I agree, but I don't think it's something, I mean, we need to do systemic things. We need to absolutely fix enrollment in universities, but we also need a ground game. When we were doing, producing The AI Effect, the second season, and I co-host that with Amber Mack, one of the things we noticed is we had about an equal number of senior women and men talking about AI. The men were extremely forthcoming about their accomplishments and their capabilities and the skills that they had built and the solutions they had delivered. And the women were extremely humble. We interviewed one researcher who's at Sick Kids and also part of the Vector Institute, who didn't even want to talk about the accomplishments that she had made. And I think there is still some inherent unwillingness to say, I can do this. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to learn something that I haven't done before, and I'm going to succeed, rather than, you know what, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing because I've been successful at this. So I think we, executives, people in business, anybody who cares about this issue, need to be finding women and pulling them along and saying, come on, let's participate in this new opportunity.
I'm a big believer in applauding those who do well in their field. And so let me just say, you know, one woman, you're awesome.
Thank you.
I think we need to say that to each other more.
You're awesome too.
Thank you. Jody Wallace, she is a managing director for artificial intelligence in Canada at the consulting firm Accenture.